Thank you so much for coming back to us for a panel, a conversation that I'm really excited to have. So we're now going to talk about connecting physical appearance with mental health. Another subject, I think, that really doesn't get discussed very much. So I am absolutely delighted to introduce Ruben and Phil. And actually, before I sort of give a little bit of context, Ruben, just tell me who you are and introduce yourself.
Well, so first of all, thank you very much for having me and being part of this panel. And all the speakers, I want to say congratulations, but most importantly, thank you for sharing your stories, because I could resonate with some of them, and some of them have been really inspiring. So thank you. Who's Ruben? Ruben is a young person affected with this condition called vitiligo. I'd like to ask you, first of all, how many of you actually know about vitiligo? If you could raise your hand.
Oh,
wow, that's fantastic.
That's really good.
That's fantastic. And I wish I could have the same response when I was working in my corporate setting and when I was a kid. I was born and raised in Italy, and I didn't really have the exposure to other people with the condition with me. So this has affected my childhood, my young adulthood, and nowadays I can boldly say that I'm proud to wear my condition. I've been working in the fashion industry for the past 4 years, and this year, recently I launched an adventure with my co-founder, which is here in the audience, called Vitiligo Allies, which aims to empower people affected with vitiligo, not only in the workplace, but most importantly in the everyday life. Because I went through the journey to accept myself, and I've been poor with my mental health, because I couldn't really put a name to how I felt. So working in the fashion industry, in the corporate setting, in the hospitality industry, for me has been a challenge, just because I was in front of people, and I was constantly reminded that I was different. It's like when you hit puberty, there's part of your body that you don't really like. You either pimple, you're too small, there's something that's changing in your body. But you know that within a couple of years or a couple of days, it will be gone. With condition, it's not like that. It's constantly there, and you have to acknowledge that. And the only step to actually accept the condition was for me to get into the education, learn more about the condition itself and the mental health, and what were the resources and the people that I could rely on in order to have a better experience with myself.
Excellent. Ruben, thank you for that overall introduction. Of course, I'm going to be coming back to you in a second with lots of questions. But Phil, welcome, and thank you for joining us. And you are a Network Operations Development Manager at DHL. So tell me a little bit about your story in relation to work. Or maybe you want to go back a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I'll start slightly earlier. So my schooling was pretty horrible. I was quite keen to leave school. I left school at 16, and luckily I got straight into a job. But I wanted to sort of expand, and I started looking for other roles. And I had a couple of really awful experiences in the interview. So one particular interview, a guy said, that thing on your face, is that contagious? Will that get into the water supply? And then a little while later, another guy, I went for an interview installing TV aerials. And the fella said, great interview, Phil, but I can't send you out to a customer looking like that. So for me, having those early experiences in my late teens, early 20s, I kind of thought that's what I'm going to get to expect. That was sort of the norm. And through my schooling, I tried to distract the bullies by using humour and I sort of programmed myself to do that. And in the work environment, I ended up walking this really narrow line between making my colleagues laugh and getting the call from HR because I'd said something that had gone past the mark. So didn't get too many of those calls, thankfully. But yeah, so having that program to use the humour to try and distract people, and then having those knockbacks early on, I think really halted my career and really put it on pause. And Ruben talked about that journey of understanding and recognising where you are on that journey. And it wasn't until I hit that point that my career actually took off again.
Ah, interesting. But before your career took off again, it all got a bit too much, didn't it? So
Yeah,
tell us just a bit about that.
Yeah, so my whole world fell apart in my early 40s, and that's when I reached out to Changing Faces, the charity here down in London, and I went to see them, and it was only then that I realised quite how ill I was. I sat there for my first session with a counsellor in the Changing Faces office, and I was given this questionnaire, and the first question was, have you ever had any suicidal thoughts? And that was the point when I realised that 45 years of being stared at, the ridicule, being bullied, the double takes, the stares, the child saying, what's on that man's face, all that just came flooding out, and it had all been locked away. And I often refer to it as like the lockers, and all of a sudden all these lockers opened up and all this absolute crap came flooding out. And it took about 10 years to hunt through all this rubbish that had fallen out of these lockers and put it neatly back into the cupboards, back into the lockers. But some of those lockers aren't fully closed yet. I'm not sure they ever will be. It's definitely a case of being able now to understand where I am on my journey and being able to front things out now and being able to talk about it and spend time with people that understand and know without having to have that conversation is really therapeutic.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. And Ruben, coming to you on the sort of your appearance affecting your mental health, your mental well-being, what has that looked like for you?
Well, it is a constant reminder that you're different, and many of us try to fit within the mold, but when it comes to your physical difference, you're constantly reminded that you're not like everyone else. So you either succumb to the part where you don't feel to belong, and the journey where people do not understand the way you feel. They don't understand the condition, and that feels that you're wrong every time. Phil mentioned how he used irony and being like the funny person in this company. For me, the way to cope with the condition was to be a people pleaser. So you found your own coping mechanism. And you realize that at the end you actually put yourself in a spot where you don't recognize yourself anymore. And the journey for me, especially with my family, because I come from a background where within the community, my family emigrated from Ghana in Italy in the 90s. And within the community, there was no conversation about mental health back in the days, and not even nowadays. So, with me being an advocate in the past 4 years means to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to embrace themselves and understanding that the confidence should come within yourself, because not everyone will understand your difference. On a day-to-day basis, and I've been a certified mental health first aider for the past 2-3 years, and I've realized that people just want the time to express themselves, be transparent, be natural. So the journey for me has been surely an up and down, and it's really important to have a supportive group, a network that can hold your hand. And even if I'm advocating, I always look for support. And when I was working in my corporate setting, I was keen to support other people, but didn't really look after myself.
Yeah, I think that's a common thread that we find that we're also going to address afterwards, that when you're in this kind of position where you're willing to speak, you forget the main person, number one, absolutely. So I think we can all resonate with that. Phil, in terms of your workforce and the workplace, so we have people here and online, they're in their workplace, new employees coming in that might have physical difference. I think on our phone call we talked about diversity of what did we talk about? Visible diversity, which
difference.
I thought was lovely as well. You know, what would you say to workplaces to, if you had been entering DHL at the age of 18 or whatever, you know, how to help people?
I think for me, it's trying to put yourself in the shoes of somebody with a visible difference. So if you were sat there as an interviewer and somebody walked through the door and they looked like me, how would you react? But think about your teams who are doing the recruiting. How would you expect them to react? But how would you want them to react? And what procedures, policies, training have you got in place for them to react in a positive way? One of those jobs that I went for and didn't get because of my birthmark, I was very highly qualified for. And I think that company missed out as a result of that. But my career now in DHL has been very successful and really rewarding. But I have found that when I do anything professional, I need to perform at a very high level to get that recognition to move on and move up in the business.
Also super interesting. I want to come back to a point that you said before, that, you know, in your 40s it all came together and wasn't great for you. Can I ask you, do you get stronger in yourself? Where are you today? I'm sure I can be honest, in this group, you get on the tube, people probably still look at you.
Yeah.
That's the way it is, you, both of you. How do you manage yourself today?
So there's lots of techniques that I've learned. The main technique is to smile at someone when they're having a look, having a stare, smile and say hello. When I get the comment from a child, "Mummy, what's on that man's face?" I drop down to their level and I have the conversation. For me, my role now is much about educating, and if it's a child, I will take my time and make a point of having a conversation. Not so much if it's an adult, depending on how that conversation is to come across, may taint my response to that. But I was asked a question, I did just stuff on telly a while ago, and I was asked a similar question there about what would you want someone to do that saw you. And I said, just say hello. And the next day I was going to the petrol station and a woman was coming in to pay for a fuel and she said, hello. No idea who it was. But she'd obviously seen me on telly the day before and I'm like, oh, that's been brilliant.
Beyond Good Morning Telly or something?
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm dead shocked with
Yeah, excellent. That's lovely. And what would you say to the same question?
I would resonate with the education part, because when I started to educate myself, I was more keen to teach other people on why I look this way. And to be totally honest, with children, you can't fake it. They blunt, they'll be honest, they'll tell you to your face what is going on with your face. You can laugh it off, but they're so innocent.
Yeah.
And it's really important to put the education through the kids. And when we get to the adult stage, is to understand where is the adult coming from. Again, I stress the importance about the culture. For me, it's really important to understand where the adult is coming from. They always will have the negative comments, but if it's done as part of ignorance, and it's coming from part of ignorance, I'll be more keen to just approach them and be proactive. Because I learned that being proactive in teaching people what it means is the key to change.
Yeah.
So for me, that is what works the best.
Now, I know, unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but that you've left the corporate work environment.
Yeah.
But if you were still in the corporate environment and, you know, speaking to everybody here today and online, what advice would you give to people? Sort of same question that I said to Phil about with visible differences.
Yeah, I think that once you cross the recruiting part, it's really important to touch the point on the onboarding stage and keeping the employee happy. It's really difficult, but as I did before, it's really important to make sure that each member of your team understand what is the visual difference. Teach them, be proactive. When your new employee joins the board or joins the company, in the case, ensure that you're there. Be that person that they can rely on. Often, when a new employee gets on board, the HR manager or the mental health manager, the line manager, feels so out of reach. You can't really get in touch with them because they're part of one department or one line and they're so far from you. Ensuring that you are close reach. They know that they can reach you out if they have any difficulties with their new working experience is really important. Be close to that person with the proactivity. The reassurance. Ensuring that someone can be there and asking the question, look, I don't feel good. We've been through this period. This onboarding period hasn't been the best. What can you do for me, or how can I help you? So it goes both ways. It's really important.
Are there any questions in the audience that anyone would like to ask? While we're waiting to see if anyone has any questions, I've got a question for both of you. Do you want a line manager when you first start a job to actually say something to you and actually address your visible differences? Or do you just want to not talk about it and blend in and not discuss it?
I changed roles about 3 years ago, and my manager heard that I said to her, I'm delivering a talk at an event. He said, would you like to practice at our team meeting? I said, yeah, great. And I did an hour's talk about me, because I know the subject quite well. So I put together a presentation, a couple of little videos in it, and for me, it's massively important that my new team knew me and my story and why I might say or do the things that I do, pre-programmed. So that was great for me, and that worked really well for me. And I've heard that work very well for children starting school, where the parents have gone in and talked to all the other children, that onboarding piece. So that worked really well for me in the work environment.
Okay, so for you, address it, I want to talk about it. Ruben, what do you think?
I just fully agree with that.
Yeah.
Because it just creates a ripple effect. With the managers being proactive the manager usually is a figure that inspires the department, and it's really important to ensure that you are the first person to take the step. That's when you're a manager, you're a leader, that's your role. Ultimately inspiring your team to take action. And that makes me understand that you're actually willing to come forward and learn about the condition, which then it makes my experience easier. And then I can focus on deliver what you need from me, because you've educated yourself and potentially you may educate your family and your colleagues. So 100%.
You know, and you understand why I asked that question, because some people may say, oh, let me just be part of the whole, you know, I don't want to be different to anyone else and let me just blend in. And I think, you know, I hope that was a fair question to ask you.
Absolutely.
100%.
Ruben and Phil, thank you so much. Really, so